Hi friends, hope you are doing well. So today I am going to discuss about the important types of master's degree, and specifically I am going to talk about the MPhil degree and how this degree compares with the other degrees such as the MSc, MA degree, or even in some countries there is a degree known as the MRes degree, and also the typical MS degree which is given by various institutions. So let's look at this important topic, because as you know, the master's degree is probably one of the most important degrees which is available to most students, in the sense that after you finish your bachelor's degree, if you want to solidify your knowledge considerably, a good idea is to do a master's degree, and then if you feel that you have a predilection for research, you can go for the PhD. Now typically the MPhil degree is given by some of the countries in the British Commonwealth, and it used to be a popular degree in many countries in the Commonwealth, though some of them are trying to phase this out. Now the places where you can get an MPhil degree include the UK, New Zealand, Australia and Norway, for example, and also for example in India, Pakistan and some of the other countries of the Commonwealth. Now what happened is that there is a demarcation in these countries between the MA degree, the MSc degree and the MPhil degree. Now let's look at each of these degrees separately and specifically. If we look at the MSc or MA degrees, these are essentially what are known as taught master's degrees. So the word taught master's degree essentially means that these degrees are essentially based on coursework, and you do a number of courses just like you did in your bachelor's degree, and then at the end of successful completion of these courses you get the MSc or the MA degree. Now these courses can be simple classes, so essentially you take courses, you give exams and so on, and they can also be seminars and lab work depending on the type of degree you are doing. So a combination of these things is done so that you get some idea about the theoretical underpinnings of your subject, about the laboratory and experimental requirements of the subject, and the seminars are meant to increase your knowledge as well as facilitate the development of some communication skills. Now if we look at an MPhil degree, there are two possibilities. Sometimes the MPhil degree can be done only by research. So essentially in this case you simply do a lot of studying of the literature, you come up with a problem which should be solved. Typically you come up with the problem in conjunction with a supervisor. So a supervisor plays a much more important role in the MPhil degree compared to the MSc or MA degree. And once you have figured out this problem, you try to solve this problem. It can be a theoretical problem, it can be an experimental problem, it can be a problem involving a combination of these things, and then at the end of this you may write a thesis, which is your MPhil thesis, and sometimes you may get a good paper out of this process also. Now because it's difficult to do the degree just with the coursework you have in your bachelor's degree, sometimes the MPhil degree may also include some courses. So essentially these courses may be courses on research methods, for example, on some basic knowledge you need of statistics and some other fields, maybe even technical writing, which will help you do the MPhil degree properly. But do keep in mind that the MPhil is largely a degree given by research, and the name essentially comes from Doctor of Philosophy. So essentially Doctor of Philosophy, the PhD, would presume that you have done a very substantial amount of novel research and you have got the PhD degree, whereas the MPhil degree presumes that you have done a reasonable amount of research, so it's a Master of Philosophy. So essentially what happens here is that the research may not have to be at the level of the PhD. It doesn't have to be a novel and significant contribution to the field, which often results in high quality journal papers. It may be something which is an extension of current work. It may even be some kind of a literature survey. It may be a way of looking at problems from a different perspective and so on. So essentially the MPhil is a very good piece of training, and not only it helps the student learn about research, but it also helps a lot of professors and especially junior faculty get some work done in terms of research. So essentially they can use the MPhil student to explore a concept without necessarily taking on the burden of giving a PhD, because once you take on a PhD you have to make sure the problem is sufficiently deep so that there is a lot of novelty possible in the contribution. So MPhil is a good way to explore any new field of research, and therefore a lot of universities and professors like the MPhil degree. Now some universities also give a degree known as the MRes degree, and MRes degree essentially is a degree which includes a combination of courses and research. So part of this is a taught master's degree similar to the MSc or MA degree, and part of the degree is done by research. Now many people like this degree because it does give you an insight about the different research methods, for example qualitative, quantitative and mixed methods, and so it's a pretty good training if you want to keep your feet in both baskets. So again, this is just a matter of nomenclature. The MRes degree focusing on some research and some taught coursework. Now there are some programs which give you the MPhil degree as a completely separate degree, and there are some programs which give this as part of the PhD degree. So in those cases what may happen is that if you finish the MPhil degree and maybe you do not want to do the PhD, you can go away with the MPhil degree, and this is a good exit strategy for people who are not very sure as to whether they really want to pursue the PhD or not. So you get to dip your feet in the waters and check out whether you have a research proclivity, and if you do, you may continue with the PhD. Now in some cases of course the MPhil can be a degree by itself, like I mentioned before. Now one of the advantages of doing the MPhil is that it can prevent you from becoming overqualified, and this of course is the problem which can happen with some PhDs, is that industry people, industry managers are sometimes reluctant to hire PhD candidates or PhD students. So what happens is that these guys think that the PhD has spent a lot of time doing independent research and may not be able to function in a team atmosphere anymore, or may not be able to respond to a boss who himself may not have a PhD. So this is something in the back of the mind of many managers, and do remember that most industry people do not have a PhD degree. So for example, if you were to do an MPhil in computer science or mathematics or statistics or data science, then you would get enough background in this particular field to get a job and then move on into the industry life. Now let's just look at some of the degrees I mentioned here, typically offered in countries such as UK, New Zealand, Australia, Norway and the Commonwealth, with the US degrees. Now in US you typically have the MS degree, and this MS degree can be offered by thesis option or non-thesis option. So when you do the non-thesis MS, this is essentially an MS by coursework. So this is what is also known as the taught master's degree in countries such as the UK. Now if you do the MS by thesis option, then you do a few courses and you do a thesis. So essentially in many cases, if you do the MS with thesis option, you can get some funding from the university for research assistantship for a particular professor and his or her lab. And in some cases, if you are a MS student who is doing the non-thesis option, you may get something like a teaching assistantship. So you may essentially help to grade courses, you may help set up some labs, and you may help in the classes. So again, which degree you want to do totally depends on your proclivity towards research or coursework. If you are somebody who is good in taking courses, good in getting A grades, then you may want to go for the non-thesis option, or you may want to go for the MSc, MA type degree. If you are somebody who is not so good at taking courses but is actually very interested in the field, likes to publish papers down the road, likes to have some idea about how research is done, then the MPhil degree is for you, the MRes degree is also for you, and the MS thesis option is also for you. Now recently in some countries such as India, there has been a desire to do away with the MPhil degree and to consider the master's degree should only be done through research. So essentially they are trying to remove the difference between the taught master's degree and the master's by research degree and say master's should only be by research. Now this is of course a good idea, but the problem may be that do we have all the professors who are able to guide these research students? So that is come to something to keep in mind. Sometimes the idea of a taught master's degree is a good one because students have a lot of lacunas and gaps in the education they receive at the bachelor's degree level, and by doing these masters which are taught, they can often bridge these gaps in their training. So that's something which is very important, and not everybody has a proclivity toward research. So essentially it's not necessary to make people go through the research path if they do not really want to do research, because what happens is that when you force people to do research, they often become very disgruntled and they develop a disdain for that subject rather than coming to it out of their own personal liking. So essentially my belief is that good research is done when you actually like to do research. So MPhil plays a good role here, and the demarcation between the MPhil degree and the MA, MSc, MRes degree is actually very useful for higher education setting. So I'll end my video here and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.